My parents told me, "You're adopted. You get nothing when we die." Then Grandma's lawyer called. The call came while I was eating cereal before my shift at the auto parts store. "Austin Caldwell, this is Margaret Stevens, estate attorney. Your grandmother Eleanor left you something." I almost laughed. "There's been a mistake. My parents said I wasn't in her will." "Mr. Caldwell, we need to meet immediately." 2 hours later, I'm staring at documents. $2.1 million, a house, investment accounts, all mine. "But I'm adopted," I stammered. Margaret handed me a letter in Grandma's handwriting. "Austin, you are not adopted. You're my biological grandson. Your father's first wife, Jennifer, was your real mother. She died when you were 2. Susan made David pretend you were adopted because she wanted you gone." My hand shook. 21 years of being treated like garbage. While my siblings got cars and vacations, I worked 2 jobs just to afford ramen. Every family dinner where they'd discuss college funds for Logan and Ashley. But when I asked about help with community college, Dad would say, "You need to learn independence." The letter continued. "David and Susan think they're inheriting everything. They've been spending money they don't have. The new truck, kitchen remodel, Logan's boat. They borrowed against my estate. They get nothing. But there was more." Margaret pulled out another folder. "Your grandmother hired a private investigator 3 years ago. She documented everything. Photos of me walking to work in the rain because my bike broke. Messages between Susan and her friends. Can't wait for the old bat to die so we can finally live properly." The investigator had recorded conversations too. Austin thinks he's family, but he's just David's mistake from his first marriage. Once Eleanor's gone, we'll have enough money to cut him off completely. "Your grandmother was furious," Margaret said. "She changed her will 6 months ago. Your parents get nothing. Your siblings get $1,000 each. Everything else goes to you." The best part, the investigator had proof they'd already spent $200,000 they didn't have. New credit cards, loans against their expected inheritance, deposits on a vacation home in Florida. I drove to their house with Margaret. It was Friday night, their weekly family dinner that I was never invited to. Through the window, I could see them celebrating with champagne and expensive takeout. Susan opened the door, saw us both, and her face lit up with greed. "Finally, Margaret, right? How much did Mother leave us? We've been waiting so patiently." Logan and Ashley crowded behind her, practically bouncing with excitement. David appeared with a bottle of champagne, ready to toast their good fortune. I smiled. "Actually, she left me everything, and this letter explaining how you lied about me being adopted." Susan's face went white. "That's impossible. You're not even real family." "Oh, but I am." I pulled out the birth certificate Grandma had kept safe. "My mother was Jennifer Caldwell. You know, Dad's first wife. The one you made him pretend never existed." David's champagne bottle slipped from his hands, shattering on their expensive marble floor. The floor they'd renovated with money they thought they'd inherit. "This has to be a mistake," Ashley whispered. Margaret stepped forward. "There's no mistake. Austin inherits $2.1 million, the house, and all investment accounts. You 3 children each receive $1,000. David and Susan receive nothing." "Nothing?" Susan's voice cracked. "But we borrowed. We spent. Oh, about that $200,000 you borrowed expecting your inheritance." I held up the legal papers. "The bank wants it back tomorrow with interest." Logan started crying. "But my boat payments, the vacation house deposit." "Not my problem," I said. "Maybe you should have treated your brother better." David finally found his voice. "Austin, please. We're family." "No," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "Jennifer was family. Grandma Eleanor was family. You're just the people who made my life hell for 21 years. Margaret cleared her throat. "There's one more thing your grandmother wanted you to know." She handed me a sealed envelope marked "Open only after confronting them." Inside was a single photo. My real mother, Jennifer, clearly pregnant, with a massive bruise on her face. The back read, 2 weeks before she died. David's handwriting. I looked up at my father, the photo shaking in my hand. "Grandma didn't think Mom died in an accident. She thought you killed her." David's face went white as snow. "That's not, I never." Susan grabbed his arm. "Don't say anything. Don't you dare say anything." But Ashley was staring at the photo, then at her father, and she started backing toward the door. "Oh my God. That's why Grandma hated you. That's why she cut you out." Logan stopped crying and looked at his father with new eyes. And suddenly David rushed toward me, not to hug me, but with his hands reaching for my throat. Margaret moved faster than I expected for a woman in her 60s. She stepped between us and David crashed into her instead, stumbling backward. She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police. One more step toward my client and you'll face assault charges on top of everything else." David froze, his hands still raised, breathing hard. Susan yanked him back by his shirt. "You idiot. You complete idiot. This is exactly what she wanted. What Austin wants. To make you look guilty. I wasn't the one who put a bruise on Jennifer's face 2 weeks before she died," I said quietly. Ashley was still backing toward the door, her eyes wide. "Dad?" She was shaking. Tell me you didn't. Tell me Grandma was wrong. David's jaw clenched. Your grandmother was a bitter old woman who never forgave me for marrying Susan. That photo means nothing. Jennifer fell. It was an accident. Both things were accidents. Margaret's voice cut through. The coroner's report from 23 years ago lists cause of death as blunt force trauma to the head, consistent with a fall downstairs. But there were also older bruises. Bruises, the coroner noted, but your father explained away as clumsiness during pregnancy. I felt sick. You hit her while she was pregnant with me? David's face twisted. You don't understand. Jennifer was difficult. She had these moods. Postpartum depression. They called it later. But back then, she wasn't postpartum, I interrupted. I was 2 when she died. That's not postpartum depression. Susan finally spoke, her voice ice cold. This is ancient history. Even if David did push Jennifer, which he didn't, it's been over 2 decades. No one can prove anything. The case is closed. Margaret smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. Actually, Mrs. Caldwell, Eleanor hired a forensic specialist to review the original investigation 6 months ago. There were significant inconsistencies that were never pursued. The angle of Jennifer's fall, the fact that neighbors reported hearing screaming an hour before David called 911, a grocery bag found at the top of the stairs, suggesting she'd just come home when it happened. Logan had stopped crying entirely. His face was pale. You killed Austin's mom? David whirled on him. I didn't kill anyone. She fell. I tried to help her, but it was too late. Then why didn't you call 911 right away? Ashley's voice was barely a whisper. Why was there an hour gap? Because I was in shock, David snapped. Because I was trying to revive her. Because I had a 2-year-old son crying in the next room and I was terrified. Or because you needed time to get your story straight, I said. Because you needed to make it look like an accident instead of what it really was. Prove it, Susan hissed. You can't prove any of this. It's all speculation and circumstantial evidence. Eleanor was a vindictive witch who wanted to hurt us from beyond the grave. Margaret tucked her phone away. The police are on their way. I've also sent them copies of the forensic review and the original case file. They'll decide if there's enough evidence to reopen the investigation. David's legs seemed to give out. He sank onto the arm of their leather couch, the one they'd bought last month with borrowed money. This can't be happening. Ashley grabbed her purse from the entry table. I'm leaving. I can't be here right now. Where are you going? Susan demanded. Away from you people, Ashley shot back. Away from whatever this is. Logan stood up too, wiping his face. I'm coming with you. You will not abandon this family, Susan said, her voice shaking with rage. We are in crisis and you two are just going to run away? This family abandoned Austin for 21 years, Ashley said. We watched you treat him like garbage and we said nothing. We laughed when you made jokes about him at dinner. We took the cars and the money and the vacations while he walked to work in the rain. So yeah, Mom, I'm running away. Because I don't want to be anything like you. She left. Logan followed without another word. The house felt bigger with just the 4 of us, me and Margaret standing near the door. David collapsed on the couch arm, Susan rigid with fury in the middle of her expensive living room. The silence stretched until we heard sirens in the distance. You've destroyed this family, Susan said, looking at me with pure hatred. Eleanor poisoned you against us, and now you're going to take everything. Even if David goes to prison for something he didn't do, you'll still have your money and your self-righteousness. I hope it keeps you warm at night. I thought about all the nights I'd gone to bed hungry because I couldn't afford groceries and rent in the same week. All the times I'd asked for help and been told to figure it out myself. All the family photos on their walls that didn't include me. I'll manage, I said. 2 police cars pulled up outside. Margaret opened the door for them. Officers, thank you for coming. We have a situation that requires your attention. The next few hours were a blur. David and Susan were taken to the station for questioning. Margaret drove me back to my apartment, the tiny studio above a laundromat where I'd lived for 3 years. It cost $650 a month and the heat barely worked, but it was mine. You should stay somewhere else tonight, Margaret said as we pulled up. Once the press gets hold of this story, they'll find you here. The press? A wealthy woman's will that cuts out her son and daughter-in-law, leaves everything to the grandson they pretended was adopted, and potentially implicates the son in a 23-year-old murder? Austin, this is going to be everywhere by tomorrow morning. I looked up at my apartment window, the curtain I'd hung to cover the broken blind, the air conditioning unit I'd installed myself because the landlord refused, the life I'd built from nothing because no one else would help me. I don't have anywhere else to go. Margaret pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. This is my home address. I have a guest room. Pack a bag and follow me. We have a lot to discuss about managing your grandmother's estate, and you need to be somewhere the reporters can't find you. Why are you helping me? I asked. You're just my lawyer. She looked at me for a long moment. Eleanor was my best friend for 40 years. I watched her cry over you more times than I can count. She showed me the photos the investigator took. You walking 5 miles to work in a snowstorm because your bike chain broke. Eating dollar store crackers for dinner. wearing the same 3 shirts to work because you couldn't afford more. She wanted to help you sooner, but David and Susan had already convinced you that you weren't really family. She was afraid you'd refuse her money out of pride or because you thought you didn't deserve it. So she waited. She planned. And she made sure that when she died, you'd finally get everything they stole from you. Your inheritance, your truth, your mother's memory. I'm helping you because Eleanor asked me to, and because after reading that investigator's reports, I think you're a good man who got dealt the worst possible hand. Now pack your bag. We have work to do. I packed everything I owned in 20 minutes. It fit in 2 duffel bags and a backpack. Margaret raised her eyebrows but didn't comment. Her house was in a neighborhood I'd only driven through on my way to other places. Big trees, sidewalks, houses with 2-car garages and landscaped yards. She pulled into a driveway with solar panels on the roof and a garden full of roses. Guest room is upstairs, second door on the right, she said. Bathroom is across the hall. Make yourself at home. I'm going to make some calls. The guest room was bigger than my entire apartment. It had a real bed with a headboard and matching nightstands, curtains that weren't sheets thumbtacked to the wall, a closet with wooden hangers. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone. 47 missed calls, 63 text messages, most from numbers I didn't recognize, but some from people I worked with. My manager at the auto parts store. Hey man, are you okay? Saw your name on the news. Call me. I opened the news app. The top story in the local section was Wealthy Widows Will Sparks Family Drama and Possible Murder Investigation. They'd used an old photo of Grandma from some charity event. She was smiling. I barely remembered her like that. Most of my memories were from the last few years, when she was sick and David and Susan only visited when they wanted something. The article didn't have many details yet, just that Eleanor Caldwell had died 3 months ago. Her will was being executed this week, and there were questions about her son's first wife's death in 2002. They mentioned me as the primary beneficiary but didn't use my name. That wouldn't last long. Ashley called at 9 p.m. I answered because I didn't know what else to do. Austin? Her voice was quiet. Are you okay? I don't know, are you? She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Logan and I are at a hotel. We used his credit card, but it's almost maxed out because of the boat payments. We might have enough for 3 days, maybe 4 if we don't eat much. What are you going to do after that? I don't know. Ashley was crying now. I keep thinking about all the times we watched them treat you like garbage and we just went along with it. You asked me for $50 once, do you remember? You needed it for a work uniform, and Mom told me not to give it to you. She said you needed to learn to budget better. I listened to her. I let my brother go without because Mom told me to. What kind of person does that make me? A person who was raised by Susan and David, I said. You didn't know any better. That's not an excuse. No, I agreed. It's not, but it's an explanation. She was quiet for a minute. The news is saying Dad might have killed your mom, Jennifer. They're saying Grandma thought he murdered her and that's why she cut him out of the will. What do you think? I think I saw the way he looked at you tonight. Ashley's voice hardened. I think if Margaret hadn't been there, he would have hurt you, maybe killed you too. And I think I've spent my whole life making excuses for him because it was easier than admitting what he really is. What is he really? A man who hurts people when they're in his way. We talked for another hour. Ashley told me things I hadn't known. How David had thrown a plate at the wall during an argument last year and Susan made her lie to the neighbors about the noise. How he'd shoved Logan during a fight about the boat purchase, hard enough that Logan hit the door frame. How Susan always defended him, always made excuses, always blamed whoever he'd hurt for provoking him. I should have told you, Ashley said. I should have warned you that they were planning to cut you off completely after Grandma died. Susan talked about it all the time. She had this whole plan to change the locks on the house and tell you not to come around anymore. Like you were a stray dog they were finally getting rid of. My throat felt tight. I'm sorry you had to grow up with them. I'm sorry you did too, she said. But at least Logan and I had each other. You had no one. After we hung up, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the photo of my mother, the bruise on her face, the way my father had lunged at me with his hands outstretched, going straight for my throat like it was instinct, like he'd done it before. Margaret knocked on my door at 6 a.m. I was already awake, sitting by the window watching the sun come up over her perfectly maintained lawn. Coffee? She asked. We sat at her kitchen table with our mugs and she spread out paperwork between us. We need to move quickly, she said. The bank that gave your parents the loans is going to file a claim against the estate. They'll argue that David and Susan borrowed that money in good faith based on an expected inheritance. Can they win? No, Margaret said firmly. Eleanor's will was ironclad. I made sure of it. But they can drag this out for months, maybe a year. In the meantime, we need to secure your grandmother's house. Your parents still have keys and they're desperate. I wouldn't put it past them to try and remove valuable items before the estate is fully settled. What do I need to do? Get a locksmith out there today and change every lock. I'll file for a restraining order on your behalf to keep David and Susan off the property. We'll also need to do a full inventory of everything in the house to make sure nothing's missing already. Already? Margaret's expression darkened. Eleanor's caretaker called me yesterday evening. Susan was at the house 2 days before Eleanor died. The caretaker left them alone for 20 minutes while she went to pick up prescriptions. When she came back, Susan was coming out of Eleanor's office, and she looked flustered. The caretaker didn't think much of it at the time, but now she's wondering what Susan was doing in there. You think she was looking for the will, or trying to change it? Margaret tapped her pen on the table. Eleanor kept the original will in a safe deposit box at the bank, and I had a copy in my office. There's no way Susan could have actually changed anything, but she might have taken other documents. Financial records, personal papers. We won't know until we do a thorough inventory. I spent the day at Grandma's house. It was a big old colonial with a wraparound porch and a garden that had gone wild without her there to tend it. I'd been there maybe 5 times in my life, always awkward visits where Susan would find reasons to cut them short. The locksmith came first. $200 to change 5 locks. I paid him cash from the $2,000 advance Margaret had given me against the estate. Then I started going through rooms with a notebook, writing down everything I saw. Furniture, artwork, photo albums. In Grandma's office, I found filing cabinets full of documents going back decades. One folder was labeled Jennifer. I sat on the floor and opened it with shaking hands. Inside were letters my mother had written to Grandma, hospital records from my birth, photos of her holding me as a baby, a journal entry dated April 2002, 2 months before she died. David grabbed my arm so hard today that I cried. He said I was being dramatic. He said I bruised easily because of the pregnancy vitamins. But Austin is 2 years old. I'm not pregnant anymore. I'm not taking those vitamins anymore. And I don't bruise this easily. I never used to bruise this easily. Mom asked if everything was okay, and I lied. I told her everything was fine, but it's not fine. I'm scared of my own husband, and I don't know how to leave him. Where would I go? How would I support Austin? David controls all the money. He says I can't work because I need to stay home with the baby. But Austin is in daycare 3 days a week now. I think David just doesn't want me to have my own money, doesn't want me to have a way out. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the journal. There were more entries, pages and pages of my mother documenting abuse, financial control, verbal attacks, being shoved, being grabbed, being told she was worthless, and lucky that David put up with her. The last entry was dated the 10th of June 2002, 2 days before she died. I told David I want a divorce. I told him I'm taking Austin and leaving. He didn't yell. He just stared at me with his cold expression and said, "You're not taking my son anywhere." Then he smiled. It was the scariest thing I've ever seen, that smile, like he'd already decided something and was just waiting for the right moment to do it. I'm so scared. I'm writing this at the library because I don't feel safe writing it at home. I'm going to ask Mom if Austin and I can stay with her for a while, just until I figure things out, just until. The entry ended there, unfinished. 2 days later, she was dead at the bottom of the stairs. I called Margaret. She listened while I read her the journal entries, my voice breaking on almost every sentence. "Austin," she said gently when I finished, "I need you to put that journal in a plastic bag. Don't touch the pages anymore. We're giving that to the police." "They're really going to reopen the case? After what you just read to me?" "Yes. This is evidence of domestic violence and possible premeditation. The fact that Jennifer told David she was leaving 2 days before she died, and that she documented being afraid of him, changes everything." Detective Amy Rosenthal came to the house that evening. She was young, maybe early 30s, with her hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that didn't miss anything. She photographed every page of the journal. She bagged the entire folder. She asked me questions about my father's behavior growing up, and I told her about the plate throwing, the shoving, the way he'd lunged at me last night. "Mr. Caldwell," she said when we were done, "I want to be honest with you. This case is 23 years old. Physical evidence is long gone. The original investigation was closed as an accidental death. Even with this journal and the forensic review your grandmother commissioned, getting charges filed is going to be difficult. But it's possible? It's possible." Her expression softened. "I've worked cold cases before. Sometimes all it takes is one piece of new evidence to make people look at everything differently. This journal is that evidence. Your mother was documenting abuse and she told your father she was leaving. Then she died 2 days later in a suspicious fall. That's a pattern we see in domestic violence homicides. What happens now? Now I take this to my sergeant. We review the original case file. We re-interview everyone who was involved back then. Neighbors, the first responders, the coroner. And we see if there's enough to present to the district attorney. And David? He's already being questioned about the discrepancies in his original statement." Detective Rosenthal glanced at her notes. In 2002, he told investigators he was in the garage when he heard a crash. He said he ran inside and found Jennifer at the bottom of the stairs. But phone records show he made a call from the house phone at the same time he claims to have been in the garage. He told police he called 911 immediately, but there's an hour gap between when the coroner estimates Jennifer died and when David actually called for help. He told us last night that he was trying to revive her. For an hour? With a toddler in the house? Without calling for any kind of medical assistance? Detective Rosenthal shook her head. The story doesn't hold up. It never really did. But in 2002, he was a grieving widower with a small child and no prior record of violence. Investigators took him at his word. Now we know better. After she left, I walked through the house room by room. In the master bedroom, I found more photos of my mother. She looked happy in the early ones, smiling, young. Then the photos changed. She looked tired, thinner. In a photo from what must have been a few months before she died, she wasn't smiling at all. She was holding me on her hip and staring at the camera with hollow eyes. I took that photo off the wall and sat on the bed with it. "Mom," I said out loud, I'm sorry I don't remember you. I'm sorry I grew up thinking I was adopted, that I wasn't really family. I'm sorry you were so scared and no one helped you." My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Austin Caldwell?" "Yeah. This is Trevor Walsh. I'm a reporter with Channel 7 News. I was hoping you'd answer a few questions about your grandmother's will and the investigation into your mother's death." I hung up. He called back immediately. I blocked the number. 2 minutes later, a different number called. I let it go to voicemail. Then another, and another. Margaret called at 10 p.m. "Stop answering calls from numbers you don't know. The press is going to hound you until something bigger comes along. Don't talk to any of them. Don't confirm anything. If they approach you in person, say, 'No comment,' and walk away. This is insane. This is what happens when money and possible murder intersect." She sighed. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we're meeting with the bank to discuss your parents' loans and we need you clear-headed." I couldn't rest. I lay in the guest bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about my mother's journal entries, thinking about David's cold smile, thinking about 23 years of lies. Somewhere across town, in whatever holding cell they'd put him in, my father was probably lying awake too, probably trying to figure out what to say, what story would save him, what lies he could tell. But the truth was already out there now, written in my mother's own hand, and no amount of lying was going to change it. The bank meeting was worse than I expected. David and Susan's loan officer was a thin man named Patrick Huang, who kept wiping sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell took out loans totaling $187,000 over the past 18 months, he explained, sliding papers across the conference table. They used Mrs. Eleanor Caldwell's estate as collateral. We were assured by both David and Susan that David was the sole beneficiary and that the estate was worth over $3 million. "Did you verify this?" Margaret asked. We requested documentation. Susan provided what appeared to be a copy of Eleanor's will dated 2019. It listed David as the primary beneficiary. Margaret's jaw tightened. That will was superseded by a new will in January of this year. The will Susan showed you was no longer valid. How were we supposed to know that? "You weren't," Margaret said coldly. "But that's your problem, not ours. You gave a substantial loan based on collateral the borrowers didn't actually have. That's a failure of due diligence on your part." Patrick's face flushed red. "Mrs. Caldwell committed fraud. She knowingly used an outdated will to secure loans. We'll be pressing charges." "Get in line," Margaret said. "She's already facing potential charges for elder exploitation. Eleanor was ill for the last year of her life and Susan had regular access to her. We're investigating whether Susan attempted to manipulate Eleanor into changing the will back, or if she tried to access Eleanor's accounts." Patrick looked like he might throw up. "The bank wants its money back. The bank can file a claim against David and Susan Caldwell personally," Margaret said. "But you're not getting a penny from Eleanor's estate or from Austin. Your loan officers failed to verify the collateral. That's not Austin's responsibility." We went back and forth for another hour. Patrick kept insisting the bank had rights to the estate. Margaret kept shutting him down with legal precedent and cold, hard facts. Finally, Patrick slumped in his chair and admitted the bank would have to pursue David and Susan directly. "They don't have any money," he said miserably. "They spent it all. The truck, the renovations, the vacation home deposit. It's all gone." "Again," Margaret said. "Not Austin's problem." We left Patrick looking like his entire career was circling the drain. In the parking lot, Margaret turned to me. "That was the easy one." "The easy one? Wait until the credit card companies realize they're not getting paid. Wait until the boat dealer repossesses Logan's boat. Wait until the Florida real estate developer sues for the forfeited deposit. This is just the beginning, Austin. Your parents' financial house of cards is collapsing and it's going to be ugly." She was right. Over the next week, it got ugly fast. Logan's boat was repossessed 3 days later. He called me crying, begging me to pay off the loan. Just $30,000. "Please, Austin, it's all I have." I told him I couldn't help him. The boat was bought with money they expected to steal from me. Let it go. Ashley had better luck. She got a job waiting tables and found a cheap apartment across town. She called me once to say she'd changed her name.
My husband slapped me when I told him I was pregnant. Evan and I had been trying to have a baby for 2 years. We've had 2 years of negative tests and wondering if something was wrong with me. Then last month I missed my period. Then I took 5 tests in one sitting because I couldn't believe the first 4. When those 2 pink lines finally appeared, I sat on the bathroom floor and cried until my sister Carrie talked me down through the phone. She told me I needed to tell everyone and make it special. Don't just blurt it out over dinner. Throw a party, invite everyone who matters. Turn this into a memory we'd tell our kid about someday. So that's exactly what I did. 7 weeks later, my house was packed with everyone I loved. My parents stood by the appetizer table. Carrie kept shooting me excited glances from across the room. Evan's parents had flown in from Arizona, and his younger brother Jeff had shown up early to help me set chairs and arrange the gift table. Evan worked the crowd like he always did, shaking hands and making people laugh, being the charming husband I'd fallen for 6 years ago. I watched him from the kitchen doorway and felt my heart swell. Tonight, I was going to make him the happiest man alive. I grabbed a fork, tapped it against my wine glass, and the room slowly went quiet. 40 faces turned toward me. My mom was already tearing up, and she didn't even know yet. Evan made his way through the crowd and stood beside me, his arm wrapping around my waist. He looked at me with warm, curious eyes, completely clueless as to what I was about to say. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice shaking a little. "I know some of you traveled really far, and I promise it's worth it." I looked up at Evan and smiled. "We're having a baby. I'm pregnant." The room exploded. My mom screamed. My dad started clapping so hard I thought he'd hurt his hands. Carrie was jumping up and down yelling, "I knew it," even though she actually did know. Everyone was hugging and crying, and the energy in that room felt like pure love. I turned to Evan, expecting him to lift me up or spin me around or do something romantic. Instead, he was frozen. His arm had dropped from my waist. His face had gone completely white. "Evan?" I reached for him. "Baby, aren't you excited? We're finally going to be parents." And that's when it came. The slap to my face that hit so hard I crashed backward into the gift table. The pain was instant and blinding, like someone had taken a hot skillet and pressed it flat against my skin. The music kept playing for 3 more seconds before someone killed it, and then there was nothing. Just silence. Just the ringing in my ear where his hand had landed. I looked up at my husband from the floor and didn't recognize the man standing over me. His face was twisted into something ugly, his chest heaving, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You cheating whore!" he yelled. "You really thought you could pass off someone else's baby as mine?" I couldn't speak. My cheek was on fire and my brain couldn't process what was happening. "Evan, what are you talking about?" I finally managed. "I've never cheated on you. I would never do that to you." He laughed and it sounded like something breaking. "Stop lying." He was screaming now, veins bulging in his neck, spit flying from his mouth. "You can't be pregnant with my baby Marina. I had a vasectomy 4 years ago before we even got married. I can't have babies." The words hit me harder than his hand did. A vasectomy. 4 years ago. He'd been letting me cry over negative tests for 2 years, knowing the whole time it was impossible. "So whose is it?" he continued, his voice getting louder. "Who have you been sleeping with behind my back? How long has this been going on?" The room was still dead silent. My mother had her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. My father looked like he wanted to end someone but couldn't make his legs move. And then someone was kneeling beside me, warm hands on my shoulders, helping me sit up, brushing glass away from my dress. I looked and it was Jeff, his face pale with shock as he stared at his brother like he was seeing a monster. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Jeff said, his voice shaking with anger. "You just hit your pregnant wife in front of everyone." He helped me to my feet and positioned himself between me and Evan like a shield. Evan was pacing back and forth like a caged animal, running his hands through his hair. 2 years I let you make me feel guilty for not giving you a baby. And this whole time you were spreading your legs for someone else?" He turned to the room, arms wide, like he was inviting everyone to see what I really was. Look at her. Look at her standing there pretending to be confused. She knows exactly what she did. She knows exactly whose baby that is. So there I was, face-stinging entire family watching accused of cheating by my own husband. And the worst part? Evan had proof. A vasectomy I never knew about. In his mind, this pregnancy was impossible unless I slept with someone else. I demanded a paternity test. It would take a week to come back. 7 days until I could prove I was innocent. But I didn't know that those 7 days would be the worst of my life. Because while I waited for science to save me, everyone I loved was about to turn on me. Everyone left the party without saying goodbye. They just grabbed their coats and filed out one by one, eyes down, mouths shut. My parents were the last to go. My father hugged me so tight it hurt and whispered, "I'll kill him if you want me to." But I shook my head because I still believed this was a misunderstanding. When the door finally closed, I turned around and Evan was already walking toward our bedroom. "Evan," I said. My voice came out smaller than I wanted it to. "Please just listen to me. I don't know how to explain this, but I haven't been with anyone else. You're the only man I've been with in 6 years. There has to be another explanation." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just this cold, empty sound that made me feel sick. "Another explanation? For how you got pregnant by a man who can't make babies?" He took a step toward me. I flinched. I actually flinched away from my own husband, and I watched that register on his face. For half a second, something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or recognition of what he'd done. But then it was gone, replaced by that hard, angry mask. "I'd love to hear it, Marina. Really. Enlighten me." I had nothing. No explanation. No defense except my own word, which clearly meant nothing to him anymore. "Then let's do a paternity test," I said. "Let's prove it scientifically. Because when that test comes back showing you're the father, you're going to have to live with how you treated me tonight. You're going to have to look me in the eyes knowing you hit me and called me those things and humiliated me in front of everyone I love. Something changed in his expression. Doubt, maybe. Or fear. He was quiet for a long moment and I let the silence stretch because I needed him to feel the weight of what he'd done. Fine, he finally said. First thing tomorrow. We sat in the clinic waiting room like two strangers sharing a bus stop. Evan sat 4 chairs away from me with his arms crossed and his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping under his skin. Every few minutes he'd glance at me and then look away like even the sight of me made him sick. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to grab his face and force him to look at me, really look at me, and see that I was telling the truth. But I just sat there with my hands folded in my lap, staring at the wall, trying not to cry in public. The nurse called my name first, and I went alone because Evan refused to be in the same room while they drew my blood. Afterwards, she told me I'd have to wait 7 to 10 business days. I sighed heavily. That meant 7 to 10 days of this hell. I nodded and thanked her and walked back to the waiting room on legs that didn't feel like mine. The texts from his family started on day 2. His mother went first. I always knew you were a whore. Now my whole family knows it too. His sister followed an hour later. You disgust me. I hope you lose that baby. His aunt sent a paragraph about how she'd warned Evan not to marry me, how she'd seen the trash in me from day 1, how I'd fooled everyone with my nice girl act, but now the mask was off. His cousin sent a photo of me from the party, mid-fall, with the caption, "Cheaters always get what they deserve." I sat on my bed reading message after message until my phone screen blurred from tears. These people had hugged me at holidays. They'd sent me birthday cards. They'd told me I was part of the family. Now they were calling me names I'd never been called in my life, and wishing harm on my unborn child. I turned off my phone because I couldn't take anymore. Carrie came over that afternoon and found me still in bed. She climbed in next to me like we were kids again and held me while I cried. "You need to leave him," she said softly. "He hit you, Marina. In front of witnesses. You could press charges. You could take him for everything." My mother called that night saying the same thing. So did my father. So did everyone in my family who reached out. Leave him, sue him, make him pay. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because the test would prove I was innocent and then everything would go back to normal. It had to. I lay awake that night with my hand on my stomach, trying to feel something. Some connection to the life growing inside me. But all I felt was doubt. What if Evan was right? What if the vasectomy made it impossible? What if somehow, some way, something had happened that I couldn't remember? The thought made me sick, but I couldn't stop it from creeping in. I went through every night of the past 3 months in my head. Every time Evan and I had been together. Every moment I'd been alone. Nothing made sense. I knew I hadn't cheated. I knew it in my bones. But if Evan really couldn't have children, then whose baby was this? On day 4, Jeff knocked on my door holding a bag of takeout. "Figured you weren't eating," he said. His voice was gentle and his eyes were soft with concern. I hadn't showered in 2 days. I was wearing the same sweatpants I'd slept in, and my hair was tangled into a mess on top of my head. I looked like a mess. But Jeff didn't seem to notice or care. He just stood there on my porch waiting patiently for me to let him in. And I did. We sat at the kitchen table and Jeff unpacked containers of lo mein and fried rice and orange chicken. He didn't ask me what happened. He didn't ask me to explain myself or defend myself or prove anything. He just handed me a fork and said, "Eat something, please." So I did. Small bites at first because I had zero appetite. But the food was warm and the company was warmer and slowly I started to feel almost human again. Jeff talked about stupid things. A movie he'd seen last week. A coworker who kept microwaving fish in the office and stinking up the whole place. His neighbor's dog that barked at 3 in the morning every single night. He filled the silence with easy conversation that didn't require anything from me except to listen. And when I finally started crying, which I knew I would, he didn't panic or pull away. He just moved his chair closer and put his arm around my shoulders and let me fall apart. "I didn't do anything wrong," I said between sobs. "I know you probably think I did, but I swear, Jeff, I have never been with anyone except your brother. I don't know how this happened. I don't understand any of this." He rubbed slow circles on my back and shook his head. "I believe you," he said quietly. "I don't know what's going on, but I know you're not that kind of person. Anyone who spent 5 minutes with you knows that." I cried harder because after 4 days of being treated like a criminal, someone finally saw me. Someone finally believed me without demanding proof. Jeff stayed for 2 more hours. He washed the dishes even though I told him not to. He made sure I had his number saved in my phone in case I needed anything. And when he left, he hugged me at the door and told me to call him anytime, day or night, if everything got too heavy. I watched him drive away and felt something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. Someone was actually on my side and not trying to tell me what to do or berating me left and right. I survived the week from hell. Evan's family calling me every name. Carrie begging me to leave him. Evan looking through me like I was already gone. The only person who didn't treat me like a criminal was Jeff. He checked on me every day, brought me food when I couldn't eat, told me Evan was wrong for what he did. But I held on because the test results were finally here. This was my proof, my vindication. Except when I opened that envelope, I didn't find salvation. I found something that made everything 1,000 times worse. 3 more days passed before the envelope arrived. Jeff checked on me a few times and brought food when he could, but mostly I was alone in a house where my husband lived 20 feet away and acted like I didn't exist. Evan had been locked in the guest room since the night of the party. He'd leave for work before I woke up. He'd come home after I'd already gone to bed. The only sign he was still living there was the coffee mug in the sink every morning, and the sound of the guest room door clicking shut every night. We existed in the same house like ghosts who couldn't see each other. Sometimes I'd stand outside the guest room door with my hand raised, ready to knock, ready to try one more time, but I never did. What was the point? He'd made up his mind about me. The only thing that would change it was proof. And proof was coming. When the mail truck finally pulled up on day 7, I was standing at the window like I'd been doing every afternoon. My heart jumped into my throat the second I saw the white envelope in the mailman's hand, clinic logo in the corner, my name printed on the front, my entire future folded up inside a single piece of paper. I ran outside in my bare feet, not caring that the concrete was cold, not caring that I was still in my pajamas. I grabbed the envelope from his hands before he could put it in the box. He gave me a strange look, but I didn't care. I didn't care about anything except what was inside. I held it against my chest and felt my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. This was it. This was finally it. 7 days of hell were about to end. I was about to be vindicated. I called Jeff first. I don't know why. Maybe because he was the only person who'd believed me. Maybe because I needed someone in my corner when I finally proved the world wrong. He answered on the second ring. The results came, I said, and I could hear the hope in my own voice. They're here, Jeff. I'm holding them right now. He told me he'd be there in 10 minutes and to wait for him before I opened anything. I agreed because I wanted witnesses. I wanted everyone to see the moment I was proven innocent. Then I went to the guest room door and knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. Evan, I called through the door. The results are here. Come out. I want you to see this with your own eyes. I pressed my ear against the wood and heard movement inside. Footsteps. The creak of the bed. Then silence. I knocked a third time. I'm not going away. This affects both of us and you're going to be here when I open it. More silence. Then finally the lock clicked. The door swung open and Evan stood there looking at me with empty eyes. He'd lost weight in the past week. His face was pale and there were dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't been sleeping either. For half a second I felt sorry for him. Then I remembered the slap. I remembered the names he'd called me. I remembered the way he'd turned the whole room against me. The sympathy disappeared. He didn't say a word. He just walked past me toward the kitchen and sat down at the table with his arms crossed, waiting. I followed him and placed the envelope in the center of the table between us. Neither of us touched it. We just stared at it like it might explode. Jeff arrived 5 minutes later. I heard his car pull into the driveway and went to let him in. He looked nervous, which surprised me. His eyes kept darting to the envelope on the table and then back to my face. You okay? He asked quietly. I nodded because I was more than okay. I was ready. I was finally going to prove that I hadn't done anything wrong. He followed me into the kitchen and froze when he saw Evan sitting there. The two brothers looked at each other for a long moment. Something passed between them that I couldn't read. Then Jeff pulled out a chair and sat down, positioning himself closer to me than to Evan. You haven't opened it yet, Jeff said, stating the obvious. I shook my head. I wanted witnesses. I wanted both of you to watch me open it so no one can say I tampered with anything, so no one can claim I switched the results or forged something or whatever other accusation might come next. I looked directly at Evan when I said that last part. He didn't react, just sat there with his arms crossed and his jaw tight, staring at the envelope like he was trying to set it on fire with his eyes. Jeff reached across the table and put his hand over mine. His palm was warm against my cold fingers. Whatever happens, he said softly, I'm here, okay? No matter what that paper says, I'm not going anywhere. I squeezed his hand and thanked him for being the only person who'd stood by me through this nightmare, for the only person who'd believed me when everyone else had already decided I was guilty. Evan's eyes locked onto our hands and something dark flickered across his face. His jaw tightened even more. His nostrils flared. Seriously? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just ice. I'm sitting right here and you're holding hands with my brother? Should I even bother reading those results or do I already have my answer? I pulled my hand away from Jeff's and stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. The sound was loud in the quiet kitchen. Don't you dare, I said, and my voice came out stronger than I expected. Don't you dare twist this into something it's not. Your brother is the only person who's been kind to me while you've been treating me like garbage. He's been bringing me food because I can't eat. He's been checking on me because you won't even look at me. So don't you stand there and act like I'm doing something wrong by accepting basic human kindness from the only person who's offered it. Evan rolled his eyes. Just open the envelope, Marina. I don't have all day to listen to your excuses. I took a deep breath and picked up the envelope. It felt heavier than it should, like the weight of my entire marriage was pressed into that single piece of paper. I looked at Evan and felt something surge in my chest. Confidence. Certainty. I knew I hadn't cheated. I knew I hadn't been with anyone else. Whatever was in this envelope was going to prove it. And then he was going to have to look me in the eyes and apologize for everything he'd put me through. I held onto that image as I slid my finger under the seal. The sound of the paper tearing was impossibly loud. I pulled out the single sheet inside and unfolded it slowly, savoring the moment. This was it. This was my vindication. My eyes scanned the words at the top. Medical terminology. Reference numbers. My name. Evan's name. And then the results. I read them once. My brain didn't process what I was seeing. I read them again. The words were the same, but they still didn't make sense. I read them a third time and the paper started shaking in my hands. No. No, 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 no. This wasn't right. This couldn't be right. There had to be a mistake. A typo. A mix-up at the lab. Something. Anything. Because what I was reading was impossible. What does it say? Evan demanded. His voice cut through the fog in my brain. Read it out loud. I want to hear you say it. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My throat had closed up. My lungs had stopped working. The room was tilting sideways, and I had to grab the edge of the table to keep from falling over. Marina, Jeff said, and his voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Far away. Muffled. What does it say? I looked up at my husband. At the man I'd loved for 6 years. At the man I'd built a life with. At the man who was waiting for me to confirm everything he already believed about me. Tears were streaming down my face, and I couldn't stop them. It says you're not the father. The words hung in the air between us. Heavy. Final. Devastating. Evan's expression didn't change. Not even a flicker of surprise. He just sat there with his arms crossed like he'd been expecting this all along. Like he'd known from the beginning that I was exactly what he accused me of being. And there it is, he said slowly. His voice was calm now. Almost peaceful. Like a storm that had finally passed. The proof. You've been cheating on me this whole time, and now you can't hide it anymore. He stood up slowly and put both hands on the table, leaning toward me until I could see every line of anger on his face. So who is it? Huh? Who's the lucky guy? Someone from work? Some random guy you met at a bar? An ex-boyfriend you never really got over? He was getting louder with each question. Tell me, Marina. I deserve to know whose baby you're carrying in my house. Whose baby you tried to trick me into raising as my own. I don't know. I sobbed. The words came out broken and desperate. I don't understand. I haven't been with anyone else, Evan. I swear on my life I haven't been with anyone else. There has to be a mistake. The lab made an error. We need to take another test. We need to... He slammed his fist on the table so hard the envelope jumped and my whole body flinched. The test isn't wrong! He was screaming now. Full volume. Veins bulging in his neck just like the night of the party. Science doesn't lie, Marina. DNA doesn't lie. The only liar in this room is you. He pointed his finger in my face and I could see his hand shaking with rage. You've been lying to me for months, maybe years. And now you're standing there crying like you're the victim? Like I'm the bad guy for being angry that my wife got pregnant by another man? I didn't do this, I screamed back at him. Something inside me broke. All the fear and confusion and desperation came pouring out as rage. I don't know how this happened, but I didn't do this. I have never been with anyone except you. Not once in 6 years. I don't understand what's happening, but I know I didn't cheat. You have to believe me, Evan. Please. I grabbed his arm, desperate for him to see me. Really see me. To look past his anger and recognize the woman he'd married. The woman who loved him. The woman who would never betray him. Please believe me. Please. I'm begging you. He shoved me away so hard I stumbled backward. My hip hit the counter and pain shot through my side. Jeff jumped up and caught me before I could fall further, his arms wrapping around me to steady me. Don't touch me, Evan snarled, and his face was twisted into something I didn't recognize. Pure hatred. Pure disgust. Don't ever touch me again. You make me sick. Looking at you right now makes me physically sick. I can't even stand to be in the same room as you. He turned to Jeff, who was still holding on to me, and his eyes narrowed. And you, my own brother, sitting here holding her hand, comforting her, being her shoulder to cry on while my marriage falls apart. He took a step toward Jeff, and for a second I thought he was going to swing. Did you know about this? Did you know she was sleeping around behind my back? Have you two been laughing at me this whole time? Jeff's face went pale. His arms tightened around me almost protectively. I didn't know anything, he said quietly. His voice was steady, but I could feel his heart pounding against my back. I swear to you, Evan. I just came to support her when the results came in. That's all. I had no idea. Evan stared at his brother for a long moment, searching his face for something. Then he laughed. That horrible cold laugh that made my blood run cold. Support her. Right. Well, congratulations. She's all yours now. You can have her. I'm done. He turned and stormed toward the guest room. I heard drawers being yanked open, clothes being thrown, hangers clattering to the floor. Jeff let go of me and I stood there in the middle of the kitchen, frozen, tears streaming down my face, my whole body shaking so hard I thought my bones might rattle loose. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. I'd been so sure, so completely certain that the test would save me, that science would prove what I already knew, prove I was innocent and faithful. Instead, the test had destroyed everything, and it hadn't even given me answers. It just told me Evan wasn't the father. It didn't tell me who was. It didn't explain how any of this was possible. It just left me standing in my kitchen with my whole life in pieces, and no idea how to put them back together. Evan came back 10 minutes later dragging 2 suitcases behind him. He didn't look at me as he walked toward the front door. His face was set in stone. His eyes were fixed straight ahead, like I was already invisible to him. Evan, wait, I begged, running after him. I grabbed the back of his shirt and he spun around so fast I stumbled backward. Don't touch me, he said through clenched teeth. What part of that don't you understand? I held up my hands in surrender, tears blurring my vision. Please, we can figure this out. We can take another test. Something is wrong. Something doesn't make sense. I know I didn't cheat Evan. I know it. There has to be an explanation. He stared at me for a long moment, and for just a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Doubt maybe, or sadness, or the ghost of the man he used to be. Then it was gone, replaced by that cold, hard mask. The only thing that doesn't make sense is how I didn't see what you really were sooner. My mother was right about you. My whole family was right about you. I should have listened to them from the beginning. He picked up his suitcases and opened the front door. I'm staying with Felix until I figure out what to do about the house. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't try to contact me at all. As far as I'm concerned, you don't exist anymore. The door slammed behind him so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. Then his car started. Then he was gone. And I was alone. I collapsed onto the kitchen floor and cried so hard I thought I might shatter into 1,000 pieces. Jeff knelt down beside me and tried to put his arm around me, but I pushed him away. I didn't want comfort. I didn't want kindness. I wanted answers. Because I knew I hadn't cheated. I knew I hadn't been with anyone else. I had never let another man touch me in 6 years of marriage. So how was this possible? How was I carrying a baby that wasn't my husband's? I stared at those results knowing how guilty this looked. Evan was gone. He wouldn't even let me explain. He had already decided I was a cheater and a liar. But I still had no idea how this happened. I didn't know that Carrie was about to ask me a question that would change everything. A question I should have asked myself weeks ago. I called Carrie before the sun came up. She answered on the first ring like she'd been waiting by the phone all night. The results came back, I said. My voice was raw from crying. Evan's not the father. She was at my door within the hour. I let her in and handed her the paper without saying anything. She read it twice, her face getting paler each time. Then she set it down on the kitchen table and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Sit down, she said. We need to talk through this. I sat across from her at the table. The same table where Evan had slammed his fist. The same spot where Jeff had held my hand. The exact place where my entire life had fallen apart less than 12 hours ago. Carrie pushed the results aside and folded her hands in front of her. I need you to walk me through everything. Not the party. Before that. When do you think you conceived? I stared at her. What does that matter? The test says Evan isn't the father. That's the only thing that matters. Just answer the question, Marina. When do you think it happened? I tried to focus. My brain felt like it was full of static. I don't know exactly. Evan and I were together a lot during that window. We had a whole system. Ovulation tracking, temperature charts, scheduled nights. It could have been any of those times. Carrie shook her head. You're about 11 weeks along. That means conception happened roughly 9 weeks ago. Maybe 10. She leaned forward. Think harder. Is there any night during that time that stands out? Anything that felt different or strange? I closed my eyes and tried to go back. All those nights of trying so hard blurred together. The same routine, the same hope, the same disappointment month after month until the one test that finally came back positive. But then something floated up from the back of my mind. A night I hadn't thought about since it happened. A night that was different from all the others. There was one night, I said slowly. My eyes were still closed, reaching for details I'd never bothered to examine before. About 9 or 10 weeks ago, I woke up because Evan was shaking me, gently. Then I felt him kissing my neck. I paused, remembering. I asked if he was in the mood and he just hummed, like a yes, and I remember wanting a baby so badly I went along with it. Carrie's voice was steady. What else do you remember? I tried to pull more from the fog. It was completely dark. We have blackout curtains because Evan's a light sleeper. I couldn't see anything, not even an outline. I paused. Something was shifting in my chest. Something uncomfortable. He never actually said anything. Not one word the whole time. Usually Evan would whisper to me, tell me he loved me, ask if I was okay. But that night it was just the hum. And when it was over he just rolled away and went to sleep. Or I thought he did. I was so tired I passed out again right after. Carrie was quiet for a long moment. I opened my eyes and found her staring at me with an expression that made me dizzy. When she spoke again her voice was careful, gentle, like she was trying not to break something fragile. Marina, I need you to really think about what I'm about to ask you. I felt my whole body tense. Okay. She reached across the table and took my hands. Her fingers were cold. That night. The darkness. The silence. The way he didn't speak. Just hummed. She squeezed my hands. Are you absolutely certain it was Evan? I yanked my hands back like she'd burned me. What kind of question is that? Of course it was Evan. I was in my own bed. In my own house. Who else would it have been? But even as the words came out, something cold started crawling up my spine. Carrie didn't look away. You said it was pitch black. You said he never spoke. Not one word. Just a hum that could have come from anyone. She paused. How do you know it was him? Because it had to be him, I said. But my voice was shaking. He was there when I woke up in the morning. Nobody else could have gotten into our house. What you're suggesting is insane, Carrie. Completely insane. Carrie's face was pale, but her voice stayed steady. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm asking you to consider something. A possibility that would explain why you're pregnant with a baby that isn't Evan's even though you swear you never cheated. I stood up so fast my chair crashed backward onto the floor. I needed to move. I needed to get away from this conversation. I needed my sister to stop saying things that were making the walls close in around me. No, I said. I was backing away from the table. That's not possible. I would have known. I would have felt that something was wrong. I would have, but would I have? The room was completely dark. Not a single word was spoken. Just that one low hum. His hands didn't touch me the way Evans usually did. Rougher. More urgent. Less careful with me. I had told myself it was because he was half asleep. Exhaustion made people different. Sometimes intimacy didn't have to be gentle to still be love. What if it wasn't love at all? What if it wasn't Evan? Oh God, I whispered. My back hit the kitchen counter and I grabbed it to keep myself upright. Carrie. Oh my God. She was out of her chair instantly, crossing the room to catch me as my legs gave out. Her arms wrapped around me and held me up while my whole body started to shake. "Breathe," she said into my hair. "Just breathe. We don't know anything for sure yet. This is just a possibility. We need to think about this clearly." But I couldn't think clearly. I couldn't think at all. If Carrie was right, then an intruder had come into my home while I was sleeping. A stranger had climbed into my bed in the dark. My body had been used while I thought it was my husband. And I had gone along with it eagerly, wanting a baby so badly that I never questioned the silence. Never wondered why the darkness felt different. Never stopped to make sure the man touching me was actually my husband. Who? I choked out. The word barely made it past my throat. Who would do something like that? Who has access to our house in the middle of the night? Carrie went very still. Her arms tightened around me. And then she said something that made my blood turn to ice. "Who has a key to your house, Marina?" The answer hit me like a truck. The only person who had one was Jeff. Jeff had a key. Evan gave him one 2 years ago when we went on vacation and needed someone to water the plants. We never asked for it back. My mind started racing through everything from the past week. His kindness when everyone else turned on me. His certainty that I hadn't cheated. Showing up at my door without being called. Sitting too close on the couch. Touching my knee. Telling me maybe my marriage falling apart was for the best. Being there when I opened the results. Holding my hand while I read the words that destroyed my life. "No," I said. But even as I said it, pieces were clicking into place. Horrible pieces. Pieces I didn't want to see. Not Jeff. He wouldn't. He's Evan's brother. He's been helping me. He's been... I trailed off. Helpful. Attentive. Always there. Never surprised by anything that happened. Like he already knew how it would end. Carrie pulled back and looked me in the eyes. "We need to find out for sure. Another test. One that compares your baby's DNA to Jeff's." My hands were shaking so hard I could barely stand. "And if it's him? If the test comes back positive? What do I do then, Carrie? What do I do if Evan's own brother did this to me?" It wasn't Evan that night. The realization hit me so hard I couldn't breathe. Someone came into my bedroom in the dark, got into my bed, and I never knew. I thought I was trying to make a baby with my husband. I was being used by Jeff. Every visit, every kind word, every time he told me Evan didn't deserve me. He knew. He knew the whole time. Now I had to make Evan believe me. He wouldn't answer his phone. He thought I was still the villain, but I knew where he was staying, and I wasn't going to let him hide from the truth anymore. Carrie didn't have an answer. Neither did I. But I knew one thing for certain. Evan needed to hear this. He needed to know what his brother might have done. I grabbed my phone and called him. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. 5 more times I tried. Each call going nowhere. Each ring making me more desperate. He'd blocked me. Or he was ignoring me. Either way, I wasn't getting through. "He's staying with Felix," I told Carrie. "I know where that is. I'm going over there." She tried to stop me. Told me I should wait until I had proof. Told me showing up hysterical with accusations against his brother would only make things worse. But I couldn't wait. Every second that passed was another second Evan believed I had betrayed him. Another second Jeff got away with what he did. I grabbed my keys and ran to my car before Carrie could say anything else. The drive to Felix's apartment took 12 minutes. I spent every one of them rehearsing what I would say. How I would make Evan listen. How I would convince him that his own brother had done something unthinkable. By the time I pulled into the parking lot, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn off the ignition. Felix's apartment was on the 3rd floor. I took the stairs 2 at a time and pounded on the door so hard my knuckles ached. No answer. I pounded again. "Evan," I yelled through the wood. "I know you're in there. Open the door, please. I figured it out. I know what happened." Silence. Then footsteps. Then the door swung open and Evan stood there looking at me like I was a ghost he'd been trying to outrun. His eyes were red. His clothes were wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Go away, Marina." His voice was flat. Dead. "I don't want to hear any more lies." I pushed past him into the apartment before he could stop me. Felix was sitting on the couch looking uncomfortable. I ignored him completely. "It wasn't me," I said, turning to face Evan. "I didn't cheat on you. I never cheated on you. But someone did get me pregnant. Someone who had access to our house. Someone who came into our bedroom in the middle of the night while it was pitch black and I couldn't see anything." Evan's jaw tightened. "What are you talking about?" I told him everything. The night I woke up to someone shaking me. The kiss on my neck. The hum instead of words. The complete darkness. The way nothing felt quite right, but I was so desperate for a baby that I didn't question it. The way whoever it was never spoke. Not once. Just that single hum when I asked if he was in the mood. Evan's face changed as I talked. The anger was still there, but it was moving away from me and towards something else. Someone else. "Who has a key to our house?" I asked him. "Besides us. Who else can get in?" I watched the realization hit him. Watched his eyes widen. Watched his hands curl into fists at his sides. "Jeff," he whispered. The name came out like poison. "I gave Jeff a key 2 years ago." I nodded. Tears were streaming down my face, but I didn't wipe them away. "He's been so helpful this whole week, Evan. Showing up without being asked, bringing me food, telling me you didn't deserve me, holding my hand when I opened those results." My voice cracked. He knew. He knew the whole time because he's the one who did it. Evan didn't say anything for a long moment. His chest was heaving. His face had gone from pale to red. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely controlled. "Get in the car." We drove to Jeff's apartment in complete silence. Evan's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping under his skin. I didn't know what he was going to do when we got there. Part of me was scared to find out. Jeff's building was a nice complex on the east side of town. We pulled into the parking lot and Evan was out of the car before I even had my seatbelt off. I ran after him as he stormed toward the entrance. He didn't buzz. He didn't call. He just waited until someone came out and caught the door before it closed. We took the elevator to the 4th floor. Evan pounded on the door with his fist. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the lock clicked. The door swung open. And there was Jeff. He wasn't surprised to see us. That was the first thing I noticed. No shock on his face. No confusion. No panic. He just stood there in the doorway looking calm. Almost peaceful. Like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. "Hey," he said. His voice was steady. Casual. Like we'd just stopped by for a visit. Evan grabbed him by the shirt and shoved him backward into the apartment. "Tell me the truth," he growled. "Tell me what you did to my wife." Jeff didn't fight back. Didn't try to defend himself. He just let Evan push him until his back hit the wall. Then he looked past his brother. Directly at me. His eyes found mine and something in them made my skin crawl. Intensity. Hunger. Possession. Like he was looking at something that belonged to him. "Marina," he said softly. My name in his mouth made me want to vomit. "I've been waiting so long to finally tell you everything." Jeff stood in that doorway looking at us like he'd been expecting this moment his whole life. No panic. No guilt. Just this calm expression that made my skin crawl. Evan demanded answers. I held my breath waiting for denials, excuses, anything that would let me pretend this was some horrible mistake. But he didn't deny it. He smiled. And what came out of his mouth next proved that this wasn't a moment of weakness or a drunken accident. This was planned. This was obsession. This was everything. The corners of Jeff's mouth curled upward in a way that made him look like a completely different person. Not the kind brother who brought me takeout. Not the gentle voice that told me everything would be okay. This smile was slow and deliberate and wrong. The kind of smile someone wears when they've been keeping a secret for years and finally get to say it out loud. "You might want to let go of me, Evan," Jeff said. His voice was steady and conversational, as if Evan wasn't pinning him against the wall with murder in his eyes. "This is going to be a long conversation, and you'll want to sit down for it." Evan's hands twisted tighter into Jeff's shirt. The fabric bunched and strained under his grip. A vein was pulsing visibly in his neck and his breathing had gone ragged and heavy. "Start talking. Right now. Tell me what you did." Jeff didn't struggle. Didn't try to push Evan off. He just stood there against the wall looking more relaxed than anyone in his position should be. Then his eyes slid past Evan and landed on me. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Something about his gaze pinned me in place. He stared at me the way a lion stares down a gazelle. It became clear I was his prey from the moment we met, and he was determined to make me his. "Fine," Jeff said softly. His eyes never left mine, even though he was answering Evan. "You want to know what I did? I'll tell you everything. But first you should know that I'm not sorry. Not even a little bit. What I did was the best decision I ever made. My chest felt like someone was sitting on it. Every breath took effort. I pressed my back harder against the wall because my legs weren't trustworthy anymore. They felt hollow, disconnected from the rest of me. Evan slammed Jeff against the wall hard enough to make a picture frame rattle. "Talk." Jeff let out a small laugh. "Having your spare key gave me so much power. Power I've been wanting for a long time. I loved that I had access to your house, your life." He tilted his head slightly. "Your wife." The word wife came out of his mouth like he was tasting something sweet. I felt my dinner rising in my throat. Evan's whole body had gone rigid. The muscles in his arms were straining against his shirt. His jaw was clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grinding. That night—
"That's not going to happen." "But it could," I said. "Ashley and I talked to Margaret. She explained that appeals were common in murder cases, that David had every right to file one, that it would probably be denied, but we should prepare for the possibility of going through everything again." Ashley was devastated. "I can't do it, Austin. I can't sit in that courtroom again and listen to them dissect what our parents did. I can't watch them try to twist it into something other than murder." "You might not have to," Margaret said gently. "Appeals rarely result in new trials. The standard for overturning a conviction is very high. David's lawyer would have to prove serious errors were made during the original trial. But for months, it hung over us like a storm cloud. The appeal was filed. The court reviewed it. David's new lawyer argued that crucial evidence had been mishandled, that Susan's testimony should have been excluded because of her plea deal, that the forensic analysis was flawed. The appellate court heard arguments on a Tuesday in November. I attended with Margaret. Ashley couldn't bring herself to go. The judges asked questions. David's lawyer stumbled on some answers. The prosecution was rock solid. 3 weeks later, the decision came down. Appeal denied. The conviction stood. David would serve his full sentence. I called Ashley. She cried with relief. "It's really over now, right? It has to be over." "It's over," I promised. But the truth was, it would never be completely over. Trauma doesn't work that way. You don't just survive something terrible and then move on like it never happened. It becomes part of you. It changes the shape of your life. I still had nightmares sometimes. Dreams where my mother was alive and David was chasing her through the house. Dreams where I was 2 years old again, crying in my crib while my mother lay dead at the bottom of the stairs. Dreams where I opened my mouth to scream and nothing came out. Riley would wake me up gently. "You're safe. You're here. It was just a dream." And I'd believe her. But the dreams kept coming. Ashley had her own nightmares, her own triggers. The sound of shouting, the smell of whiskey, the sight of grocery bags, because that's what David had been carrying the night he killed Jennifer. We learned to live with it. That's what survivors do. We learn to carry the weight without letting it crush us. We learn to function around the pain. We learn that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about integrating, taking the broken pieces and building something new with them. The foundation grew. We helped more women. We saved more lives. Every woman who escaped because we gave her resources. Every child who grew up safe because we helped their mother leave. Every life that continued because we intervened. That was Jennifer's legacy. That was what came from her death. Ellie started asking more questions about Grandma Jennifer as she got older. Why did she die? Was she sick? Riley and I had talked about how to handle this. We decided on honesty, age-appropriate but truthful. Grandma Jennifer was hurt by someone who was supposed to love her. She died because of that hurt. It wasn't fair and it wasn't right. But her life meant something. She loved your daddy very much and she tried to protect him. Who hurt her? Ellie asked. Someone bad, I said. But he's in jail now. He can't hurt anyone anymore. Ellie thought about this. Did you know him? I did, I said carefully. But I don't see him anymore. And I never will again. Good, Ellie said firmly. People who hurt other people should stay in jail forever, out of the mouths of babes. James was too young to understand any of it yet. He just knew he had two grandmas in heaven, Eleanor and Jennifer, and we talked about them sometimes. He liked looking at photos of Eleanor's garden and hearing stories about how she used to grow tomatoes bigger than his head. Normal life. That's what we'd built. A normal, stable, boring life where the most dramatic thing was James refusing to eat vegetables or Ellie getting in trouble at school for talking during quiet time. I worked. Riley worked. The kids went to school. We had dinner together every night. We watched movies on weekends. We took vacations to the beach and the mountains and Disney World. We were aggressively, defiantly normal. But underneath it all, the history remained. The weight of everything that had happened. Everything we'd survived. It was always there. We just got better at carrying it. Ashley had a baby girl. They named her Jennifer, after my mother. Little Jenny looked nothing like her namesake, but Ashley swore she had Jennifer's spirit. Strong and stubborn and brave. Sophie and Jenny and Ellie and James became a pack. 4 cousins who played together constantly. Who built forts in the backyard and put on shows for the adults, and fought over toys and made up immediately after. They were growing up in a family that loved them. That would never make them question their worth. That would never treat them as less than. That was the victory. Not the inheritance. Not the trial. Not David rotting in prison. The victory was these 4 kids who would never know what it felt like to be unwanted. Who would never have to wonder if they belonged. Who would grow up safe. Margaret died peacefully in her sleep when she was 74. We found out 2 days later when her law partner called. She'd left instructions for her funeral. Simple. No fuss. Donations to the Jennifer Caldwell Foundation in lieu of flowers. At the funeral, I learned things about Margaret I hadn't known. She'd been married once, briefly, in her 20s. She'd lost a daughter to domestic violence when she was 40. That's why she'd become so close to Grandma Eleanor. That's why she'd fought so hard for Jennifer's case to be reopened. She was fighting for her own daughter, too, for the justice she'd never gotten. I gave the eulogy. Margaret was the kind of person who changed lives quietly. She didn't seek attention or praise. She just did the work. She helped people. She fought for what was right. And she made sure that when my grandmother died, the truth came with her. I'll never be able to repay what she did for me, for my mother, for all of us. But I'll try. I'll keep the foundation going. I'll keep helping people the way she helped me. That's how I'll honor her. Ashley cried through the whole service. So did I. We'd lost another piece of our support system, another person who'd believed in us when no one else did. But we kept going, because that's what you do. You keep going. 3 years later, I got a call from the prison. David was sick. Stage 4 lung cancer. He had maybe 6 months left. He wanted to see me. I said no immediately. But the chaplain called back a week later. Mr. Caldwell, your father is dying. He's asking for a chance to make peace before he goes. I'm not saying you owe him anything, but I'm asking you to consider whether you might regret not seeing him one last time. I talked to Riley about it. She left the decision up to me. You're the only one who knows what you need. I talked to Ashley about it. She said absolutely not. He doesn't deserve your time or your forgiveness. I talked to Dr. Hammond about it. She asked what I thought I might gain or lose by going. What would it give you to see him? What would it cost you to refuse? I didn't know the answer. In the end, I went. Not for him, for me, because I needed to look at him one more time and confirm that he had no power over me anymore. That he was just a dying old man who'd made terrible choices and was facing the consequences. The prison escorted me to the infirmary. David was in a bed surrounded by machines. He'd lost at least 50 pounds. His skin was gray. He looked like a ghost. "Austin," he said when he saw me. His voice was weak. "You came. I'm here. That's all you get." He nodded. "That's fair." He coughed, a wet rattling sound. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted to tell you one thing before I die." "What?" "I loved your mother," he said. "I really did. And I killed her anyway. That's the truth. I loved her and I was so angry that she was leaving that I pushed her. I didn't mean for her to die. I just wanted her to stop talking about leaving, to stop saying she was taking you away from me. So I pushed her and she fell and she died. And I've spent every day since then knowing I destroyed the only person who ever really loved me." Tears were running down his face. I felt nothing. "I made myself into a monster," David continued. "I treated you like garbage because I hated that you looked like her, that you reminded me of what I'd done. Susan enabled it because she was afraid of me. Logan and Ashley went along with it because they didn't know any better. And your grandmother saw right through all of it. She knew what I was. She knew what I'd done. And she made sure you'd be okay after she was gone. She saved you when I tried to destroy you." He reached toward me with a shaking hand. "I'm sorry. I know it's not enough. I know it doesn't fix anything. But I'm sorry." I looked at his hand. "I didn't take it. You don't get to die with a clear conscience. You don't get to confess and feel better. You killed my mother. You stole my childhood. You're the reason Logan is dead. You're the reason Ashley struggles every single day. You did that. You chose that. And now you get to die knowing exactly what you are. A murderer, an abuser, a failure." David's hand dropped. His face crumpled. "You're right. You're absolutely right." I stood up to leave. Then I turned back. "One more thing. I have a family now. A wife and kids. They're never going to know you. They're never going to visit this prison or hear your excuses. You're nothing to them. Just a story about why we don't tolerate violence. Why we don't make excuses for abuse. Why we protect each other. That's your legacy. Being the example of what not to be." I walked out. I didn't look back. 3 months later, the prison called to tell me David had died. Did I want to claim the body? "No," I said. "Cremate him and dispose of the ashes. I don't care how." They did. Wherever David's ashes ended up, I never knew. I never asked. My stepchildren said they answer only to their biological parents. So, I changed the locks, canceled every privilege in my name, and told their father pickup was tonight. No one argued. I'm Tom, 35, and I've been married to Lisa for 18 months. She has 2 kids from her first marriage, Dylan, 17, and Sophia, 15. Their biological father lives about 40 minutes away and sees them maybe twice a month when he feels like showing up. When Lisa and I got together, I genuinely wanted to be the stepdad I never had growing up. My own father walked out when I was 12, so I knew what it felt like to need a father figure. I thought being a good stepdad meant being the yes man. Always supportive, always generous, always understanding. New school clothes, sure, no problem. Concert tickets for Sophia's favorite band. Of course. When Dylan wanted the latest gaming setup, I dropped $800 without blinking. When he crashed my car last month after staying out past curfew, I didn't even make him pay the $500 deductible. But respect, that was a completely different story. It started with small things. "You're not our real dad," became their go-to response whenever I asked them to do basic household tasks. When I'd ask Dylan to take out the trash, he'd say, "I only listen to actual parents." When Sophia left dishes piled in the sink for days, she'd shrug and say, "My mom didn't tell me to clean them." Lisa would have talks with them about respect, and they'd apologize and behave for maybe a week. Then, we'd be right back to the same pattern. The breaking point came last Friday. I decided to leave work early to surprise Lisa with dinner plans for our anniversary weekend. I pulled into the driveway around 3:00 inches the afternoon and immediately knew something was wrong. There were cars I didn't recognize parked on our street, and I could hear music blasting from inside the house. I walked through my front door to find about 20 teenagers having a full-blown party in my living room. Red Solo cups everywhere. The coffee table pushed against the wall. Kids I'd never seen before eating food from my kitchen. My house was completely trashed. Broken lamp. Mysterious stains on my white couch. Empty bottles scattered everywhere. Dylan was in the center of it all, acting like the king of the castle. When he saw me, he didn't even look embarrassed, just annoyed that I'd shown up. "Party's over," I said loudly. "Everyone out now." The music stopped. Kids started grabbing their stuff and heading for the door, but Dylan didn't move. "Clean this mess up immediately." I told him once the house was empty. He actually laughed. "You can't tell me what to do. You're not my father. This is my house, Dylan. My couch that's ruined. My lamp that's broken." "No," Sophia interrupted, appearing from the kitchen. "It's Mom's house too. We live here. We only take orders from real family, not from some guy Mom married." That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The door to my home office was wide open, and I always kept it locked. I walked over and immediately saw that my safe was open. My emergency cash envelope, the one where I'd been saving money for Lisa's surprise birthday trip to Hawaii, was completely empty. $2,000 gone. I turned around slowly. Where's my money? Dylan shrugged with this smug expression. What money? I don't know what you're talking about. Prove we took it, Sophia said with a smile that made me realize this wasn't just disrespect anymore. This was theft. I stood there staring at these two kids I'd been supporting for over a year. Kids who ate my groceries, used my electricity, lived under my roof, and had just robbed me blind while throwing a party in my house. Something inside me switched off. Not anger, just cold, clear understanding. I pulled out my phone and called a locksmith. I need all my locks changed today. How soon can you be here? Then I called their biological father. David, it's Tom. Come get Dylan and Sophia tonight. Bring a truck because they need to take everything they own. They're not welcome in my house anymore. What happened? He asked. Ask them. You have 2 hours. I hung up and turned to find Lisa standing in the doorway. She'd come home early. She looked at the destroyed living room, at her children, then at me with an expression I couldn't read. Dylan, Sophia, go to your rooms. They didn't move. Now, they left reluctantly. Lisa waited until we heard their doors close. Then she walked to me slowly, reached into her purse, and pulled out papers. I've known about the disrespect for months. I hired a private investigator last week. She dropped the folder on the ruined coffee table. What I found out about what they've been doing wasn't just stealing from you. I picked up the folder with hands that weren't quite steady. The first page was a credit card statement. Not mine, not Lisa's. Dylan's name was on it. A card I'd never seen before with a $3,500 balance. The charges made my stomach turn. Online gambling sites, cash advances, liquor stores, all within the last 3 months. Keep going, Lisa said quietly. The next page was worse. Screenshots of text messages between Dylan and his friends. Planning parties at our house. Coordinating when I'd be at work. They'd done this 5 times. 5 different parties while Lisa was working late shifts at the hospital and I was supposedly safely at the office. The stolen money wasn't a one-time thing. It was systematic. He's been taking cash from my purse for months, Lisa said. I thought I was going crazy, misremembering how much I had. The investigator set up a hidden camera in our bedroom last week. She pulled out her phone and showed me a video. Dylan, walking into their bedroom like he owned it, going straight to Lisa's dresser, taking bills from her wallet. The date stamp showed Tuesday, 3 days ago. There's more, Lisa said, and her voice finally cracked. The investigator had followed Dylan and Sophia to places they told us they weren't going. Dylan wasn't at basketball practice last Thursday. He was at a house party 2 towns over where police broke up a fight and found drugs. 3 kids were arrested. Dylan left 10 minutes before the cops arrived. Pure luck he wasn't caught. Sophia's pages were different, but just as bad. She'd been cutting school with her boyfriend. The one 9-year-old boyfriend neither of us knew existed. The one who'd been driving her around in a car registered to someone with a criminal record for assault. The investigator had photos of them together. Of Sophia getting into his car after saying she was going to study group. I've been making excuses for them for years, Lisa said, telling myself it was the divorce, that they needed time, that we just needed to be more understanding. She looked at me with red eyes. I've let them disrespect you because I was afraid if I chose you over them, I'd lose them. But I already lost them. They're not who I raised them to be. Or maybe they're exactly who I raised them to be by never holding them accountable. I heard a car door slam outside. David had made good time. I already told him everything, Lisa said. Sent him the investigator's report this morning. He tried to make excuses. Blame me for being too strict. Blame you for being a bad influence. Then I told him if he didn't come get them tonight, I was calling the police about the theft and showing the gambling records to the judge to modify our custody agreement. The doorbell rang. Lisa answered it. David stood there looking smaller than I remembered. Not physically, just diminished somehow. Behind him was his girlfriend Candace, the one Dylan and Sophia claimed was so much cooler than their mom. Where are they? David asked. Packing, Lisa said. They have 1 hour. Anything left behind gets donated. You can't just kick them out, Candace said. They're minors. I can remove them from a home where they've committed theft and are facing consequences for their actions, Lisa replied. They'll be living with their father as per our custody agreement, which states he can have them full-time if I'm unable to care for them. Right now, I'm unable to care for them without compromising my marriage and my mental health. Candace opened her mouth, but David put his hand on her arm. He saw something in Lisa's face that made him back down. Dylan came down first, dragging 2 duffel bags. His expression was different now, not smug anymore, almost worried. He looked at the folder still open on the coffee table, and his face went pale. You hired someone to follow me? I hired someone to document what you were doing with the freedom and trust we gave you, Lisa said. Get in your father's truck. Mom, I can explain. Get in the truck. Sophia appeared on the stairs, crying. Real tears this time, not the manipulative ones she'd used before. Mom, please, I'm sorry. We didn't mean. You didn't mean to get caught, Lisa interrupted. That's different from being sorry. You've had 18 months to be sorry, to change, to show even basic respect to Tom, who's never been anything but kind to you, who paid for your clothes and your food and your activities and asked for nothing in return except basic human decency. We'll do better, Dylan said. We promise. Your promises mean nothing, I said. It was the first time I'd spoken since David arrived. You've made promises every time your mom talks to you about your behavior. Then, 3 days later, you're back to the same patterns. I'm done. Your mom is done. You're going with your dad, and maybe living without someone to steal from and disrespect will teach you something. David flinched at that. Candace looked uncomfortable. Let's go, David said quietly. Get your stuff in the truck. The locksmith arrived as they were loading the last of their things. Perfect timing. Dylan watched the man start changing the locks on the front door with an expression I couldn't quite read. Reality setting in, maybe. Sophia tried one more time, grabbed Lisa's arm as she was walking to the truck. Mom, please don't do this. I'll be better. I promise I'll be so much better. Lisa gently removed her daughter's hand from her arm. I love you. That's not going to change. But love isn't enough anymore. You need consequences. You need boundaries. You need to understand that actions matter. Maybe your father can provide that. Maybe not. But I can't keep doing this. I can't keep watching you hurt the people who care about you and pretend it's fine. You're choosing him over your own kids, Dylan said bitterly. I'm choosing my sanity over enabling your bad behavior, Lisa corrected. There's a difference. They left. David's truck pulled away with Dylan in the passenger seat and Sophia in the back, both staring out the windows. Candace followed in her own car. The locksmith finished with the front door and moved to the back. Lisa and I stood in our destroyed living room, broken lamp still on the floor, stains on the couch, the safe in my office still hanging open and empty. I'm sorry, Lisa said. For what? For not doing this sooner, for making excuses, for letting it get this bad. I pulled her close. She buried her face in my shoulder and started crying. Not quiet tears, full-body sobs that shook both of us. 18 months of frustration and guilt and anger and fear all coming out at once. We're going to be okay, I said, even though I wasn't sure I believed it. The locksmith finished and handed us new keys. 4 sets. I paid him in cash from my wallet since the emergency fund was gone. He looked at the destroyed living room but didn't ask questions. That night, Lisa and I cleaned in silence, threw away the broken lamp, scrubbed the stains with carpet cleaner, put furniture back where it belonged. Around midnight, her phone started ringing. David's number. Don't answer it, I said. She looked at me. What if something's wrong? Then he can text. The phone went to voicemail. Rang again immediately. Lisa put it on silent and set it face down on the counter. We went to bed exhausted. Lisa fell asleep almost immediately, but I lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about the credit card debt, the gambling, the parties, the theft, how long it had been going on right under our noses. My phone buzzed.